everyone. This is your Dr. Yourself Bobby, and I'm gonna present the division for groups. Our topic is should, and my teammate is sorry for the Dr. Osman Bajinka, and our topic is should pharmaceutical company be required to develop antibiotic targeting Africa-specific resistance genes identified via genomic studies, and beside the affirmative team, and I'm gonna present what we work together with Dr. Osman. So nowadays, antimicrobial resistance is not a distant threat; it is a current crisis in Africa, which means it is our current problem we face nowadays, and there is a distinct biological trait. African unique genetic battlefield is producing resistant gene not found elsewhere. So this is a major biological trait identified by different researchers. And what is the innovation gap? When we look, global drug pipeline currently overlook those specific strains, and they found many else are left with the placebo treatment medicines that are no longer effective against the local mutations or the problem identified as a genetic battlefield. And genomic studies have already identified Africa-specific resistance pattern. So this is the map that we use to work our topic or our current problem, and what the requirement is. Pharmaceutical company must be mandated to turn this data into targeted antibiotics, and by doing this or by doing this local action, we can make or we can ensure the global protection. This is the firewall strategy, stopping Sparrowbug at its source, prevent global pandemic, and this is ensuring the local safety or doing the local action, ensure the global protections. And the ethical mandate is that true health equity means developing drug for most at risk, not just most able to pay. So this is the basic ethical mandate. And other opening statement. So as an opening statement, antibiotic resistance is not just a health issue, it is a driver of inequality, because Africa suffers the highest mortality rate from resistance infections globally, and many research shows that Africa faces unique genetic resistance pattern that differ significantly from those in the West or most civilized countries. And what is the current the failure of the current medicine? Because most drugs are developed for Western market, they often miss the specific biological targets found in Africa. Also, they are not produced based on their the African biological genes. So this is the major failure of the current medicine. And what is this? Why is it a problem? So when we look at it, the doctors are left fighting the 21st century superbugs with outdated tools, and leading to the widespread treatment failure. And this affect the African continent. And why? What is the solution, or what is the closing method to fill this gap? Is a mandate for global security. Genomic is our roadmap, so we are no longer guessing. So cutting-edge genomic studies have already mapped the specific genes that make African bacteria so deadly. So this is a major solution. That's why we include or we support the affirmative side of our topic. But the problem is scientific discovery is ahead of pharmaceutical production. The data exists, but the drugs do not. So this is a major problem. So we should we should produce antibiotics that are specific for the African genes. And the non-negotiable mandate is that ethical duty or pharmaceutical company have a moral obligation to serve the population most at its risks. So this is ethical duty, not also it should be mentioned as an idea, or it is an ethical duty or a mandate. So the practical necessity is that we must mandate the development of target treatment. If we do not stop this specific African strains at their source, they will inevitably become the world's next global pandemics. So if we not working on this, or we can see, or we see global the globe suffering from the next pandemics. So our constructive argument is that public health equity, and the headline is breaking the cycle of exclusion is the major headline. So the problem is Africa is historically excluded from the global drug development, creating the pharmacy desert. So this is our major problem. So the mandate is that, or what should be done is requirement for targeted R&D ensures that African patients receive treatment designed for their specific biological needs. Example, we can mention for this problem a different scenario, like the neonatal crisis in South Africa, Klebsiella pneumoniae outbreak in newborn units, and carers like Bla Oxy 48 and NDM1 resistance genes. And these are the case scenario that are suffering, that makes suffer to the African continent, and this is a current problem. So what makes this a problem is, or what they result is that mortality rate exceeding 50%, because standard antibiotics fall against this specific markers. This is mentioned in the Nature Communication 2021. So the other constructive argument is the scientific necessity and global defense. So the headline for this argument is that proactive genomics versus reactive medicines. The engine of evolution is that Africa high bacterial diversity acts as a testing ground for new resistance mutations. And for this, as a strategy, use Genomic to neutralize super lineage before they go global is the solutions. So we can mention different case scenarios like the Salmonella search in East Africa, a unique Salmonella typhi lineage identified in Kenya and Tanzania. So mutation surrender, the first line ciprofloxacin ineffective, and the global threat is that this lineage has already begun spreading across borders, proving that African resistance is a global security risk. So the risk for Africa is becoming the risk for the globe. The other, our constructive argument is the economic reality. So antibiotic resistance is projected to cost the global economy $100 trillion by 2050 if we do not innovate now. So this is a major economic collapse that suffered the continent, and the healthcare strains also treatment failure leads to longer hospital stay and ICU admissions, and this costs a lot of economic damage. And we can mention the 300% price tag in West Africa as a case scenario, and the outbreak of Actinobacter pneumoniae in West African facility is the mentioned example that face the economic reality of the antibiotic resistance, and this impact the healthcare costs rose by over 300% per faculty to manage untreatable infections. And this is big damage, and we should work together by providing the African specific targeted genes or antibiotics. So the negative team mentioned different counter arguments for our arguments, and the first one is on the scientific obsolescence and spread. So while they argue that genes travel, they miss a critical biological reality. Africa is a primary hotspot for genetic diversity. By the time a resistance gene reaches London or New York, it has already mutated and spread. So this is our counter argument. By requiring development in Africa now, we are not just helping one continent, and also we are creating a global early warning system. So It is a benefit for all of the globe that work for the global, ensuring the global safety. So identifying and neutralizing the genes at their sources, the only way to prevent the very global spread and negative team fears. So we do not wait for a fire to reach the whole forest before we start spraying water. So we go to the spark, and we actually we call for action now to see the bright future of the African continent and also the globe. So other constructive argument of the negative teaming is that on economic injustice and innovation, they mention that high cost of R&D as a deterrent, but the current market model has already failed. Pharmaceutical companies have largely abandoned antibiotic research because it's not profitable enough under standard models. So the idea that one fit for all is now outdated or expired. So imposing this requirement is not an injustice. It is just a necessary pivot toward pull incentive models. By focusing on Africa-specific genomic data, companies tap into massive undeserved market with high clinical need. This provides a clear data-driven pathway for regulation and fast-track approvals that could actually revitalize the industry rather than push it away. So it is not an injustice, it is just equality or the pull initiative in model that can change the world together or that can brighten the future of the African nations. On the comprehensive approach, the negative team argue for universal solutions, but universal often become euphemism for Western-centric. History shows that when we aim for universal solution, Africa genomic data is systematically excluded, leading to treatment that are less effective for those populations. So the system for developing drug is excluding the African continent, and that's not a solution or the cooperative approach. So true global coordination requires equality, not just equality. We cannot have a coordinated global scale if the second largest continent specific genetic markers are ignored. And targeting Africa specific gene is not isolating the problem, it's finally filling the massive hole in our global defense strategy. So when we when we apply the comprehensive approach, excluding the African continent is not a solution, but they should include Africa since it is the second largest continent in the world. And the core logic is if we do not stay resistant where it's most diverse and aggressive, we are fighting a global war with only half the intelligence, because we can mention that the corona pandemic that's happening in the soon years. So this is one example. So since we did not fighting together this, or we provide the African specific genes, the globe will suffer from different pandemics that arise from the African continent. And as a closing statement, we mentioned that the future of global health security. So to brighten this or to see the global health security, the missing link is the antibiotic resistance genes Africa project, and 15 novel resistance genes identified in Pseudomonas aeruginosa. And the gap is 0% of those genes are targeted by current global R&D. And the risk is without a mandate, those genes will continue to spread unchallenged. And this is the major risk that we should work on. And the mandate for this risk are a triple priority. Equitable access for undeserved populations is the justice and the science using the most advanced genomic data availability and strategies at proactive defense against the next global superbug. So this triple priority should be the mandate for improving our African nation health, African's continent health, or the population of Africa as well as the globe. So the final call to action is adopting mandatory genomic-driven framework for Africa now to protect the world tomorrow. So this is the final action we support or we mentioned as closing statement. So We use different references as mentioned in the 2 slides. So this is the final of my debate session, and thank you for your attention. If you have any comment and questions, I will accept, and thank you for your attention.